Happy New Year, everyone. In this video, I'm going to reveal 8 wines that I'm buying in 2026. There's a variety of regions, countries, and price points represented, as well as red wines and a white wine. So there should be something for everyone. I recently spent a week in Bordeaux. While I was there, I visited iconic second growth Bordeaux producer, Léoville-Lescasse. While there, I tasted not just some Léoville-Lescasse wines, but also some other impressive wines from the Delon family lineup. One such wine offers compelling value at around 25 euros per bottle and around $36 or $37 in the United States, namely Chateau Potensac. Potensac is located in the Medoc, but it's extremely close to both Cologne-Ségur and the Saint-Estèphe border. As such, their soils are very comparable to some of the soils in Saint-Estèphe, and they're capable of producing extremely high-quality Cabernet Sauvignon. Better still, their vines average an impressive 50 years of age, and there's even some parcels with 80-year-old vines. 2022 is undoubtedly one of the strongest vintages ever for Potensac, and that's the vintage that's currently on the market now. This wine is a blend that consists of a little more than 40% Cabernet Sauvignon, a little less than 40% Merlot, around 20% Cabernet Franc, and there's also a splash of Petit Verdot. This is very much a classic claret. This wine features a black fruit profile, and there's also flavors and aromas that include tobacco, cedar, and mixed spice. Despite the modest price point, this wine is extraordinarily age-worthy and will cruise in your cellar for up to 2 decades, and I also recommend that you try to leave your hands off it for at least 5 to 6 years or so. While I was in France, I also spent a day in Champagne, where, among other things, I visited world-class producer Louis Roederer. I'll have more on this visit in the weeks to come, but for now, I want to strongly recommend that you consider buying the Louis Roederer Collection Brut Champagne, which is definitely a wine that I'll be buying in 2026. Collection is the name that Louis Roederer gives to its multi-vintage wine. The current release is the Collection 245, which is made from the outstanding 2020 vintage base wine, but the 246 will be coming out in the very near future. During my recent trip, I was able to try both the Collection 245 and 246, and you really can't go wrong with either one of them. The best thing about this champagne is the extraordinarily reasonable price. If you search, you can find this wine for around $60 per bottle. Just to give you a frame of reference, the Krug multi-vintage wine sells for more than 3 times this price. And yet this wine offers exceptional quality at the $60 price point. This is a highly acclaimed champagne, and justifiably so. The fruit sources include around 35% from a perpetual reserve that was started back in 2012. In addition, there's 10% of reserve wines from between 2012 and 2018, and Louis Roederer also includes some of the fruit from the younger vines in the vineyards that will ultimately go into the Cristal wine when these vines reach 20 years of age. This champagne is a huge step up from the majority of champagnes that sell at this price point. It's powerful and concentrated, but yet there's ample acidity and freshness as well. You can expect flavors and aromas of pear, white peach, lemon, almond, crushed rock, and blossom. While I was on Bordeaux's right bank, in addition to visiting Saint-Emilion, I also spent a day in Pomerol. While in Pomerol, I visited one of my favorite producers in Pomerol, namely Chateau Clinet. Chateau Clinet is a little bit different from some other Pomerol-based producers in that rather than using Cabernet Franc, they use Cabernet Sauvignon to blend with their Merlot. This is something that traces back to before the frost in 1956 and that they used to do historically, but which they've recently started doing again. So the 2023 vintage, for example, consists of 75% Merlot and 25% Cabernet Sauvignon. In addition to tasting several other strong vintages of Chateau Clinet was gracious enough to give me an early read on the 2023 vintage. In fact, they said that I was the first one to get to taste it at the winery. This is a wine that will be released in the coming weeks at an extremely reasonable $89 per bottle. This is a highly acclaimed wine that was well received by all the critics who reviewed it, and justifiably so. This wine featured flavors and aromas of cherry, plum, licorice, an intriguing orange peel note, floral notes, and also mixed spice. There was ample acidity, it was extraordinarily well balanced, and there was a long, refreshing, complex finish. Really a delightful wine despite its youth. So this is definitely one to keep an eye out for as it's rolling out into the market in the weeks to come. I don't typically recommend New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc on this channel. That's not because it's not worth buying, but rather most of that wine offers a pretty high floor and it's hard to really get a bad one. So for the most part, I don't think people need my help with Sauvignon Blanc recommendations from New Zealand. But every once in a while, there's a particularly special wine that I think it's worth calling to your attention. So it is with this next wine, namely the 2024 Clos Henri Otira Glacial Stones Sauvignon Blanc. This is an extremely highly acclaimed wine. It's definitely a complex wine and a level up from the run-of-the-mill New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. This wine is produced by an iconic Sancerre producer, namely Domaine Henri Bourgeois. This is a mineral-driven wine with flavors and aromas that include lemon, grapefruit, lime, passion fruit, apples, marzipan, and ginger. Better still, this wine sells for an extremely reasonable $30 per bottle. So this is one I would definitely strongly recommend. While many people write off Burgundy because they think the wines are just too expensive, I think that's a mistake. If you know where to look, you can find some exceptional values and some extremely impressive, enjoyable wines at very fair prices. One of my favorite places to look for value in Burgundy is Marsannay. So the next wine that I'm buying in 2026 is the 2022 Domaine Charles Audoin Marsannay Clos de Roy. This impressive wine sells for around $80 per bottle. Tasting it blind, you'd almost guess that it was a high-quality Premier Cru from Chambol. By that, I mean that this wine has intensity and concentration, but I was also struck by the purity of fruit and the silkiness of the tannins. This is a wine that comes from organically grown fruit. It has impressive acidity and a long finish. Flavors and aromas include cherries, strawberries, rose petals, and earth. Well, the next wine that I'm buying in 2026 has some descriptors that very much remind me of the Northern Rhone. This is actually a highly acclaimed wine that comes from northern Spain, which over-delivers at between $25 and $30 per bottle. This wine is a blend that consists of around 80% Mencia, and there's also some smaller percentages of local grapes. The winemaking adds a lot to this wine, as they use some whole cluster fermentation that adds some intriguing aromatics. They also emphasize the purity of the fruit for this wine in their maturation process, which uses restrained amounts of new oak. In fact, 2/3 of this wine matures in vats. Those of you who are impatient will appreciate the fact that you can enjoy this wine immediately. You don't need to age it further at all. This is the 2022 Guimaro Camino Real Mencia, which features flavors and aromas of mixed red and black fruit and a smoked meat characteristic that very much reminds me of the Northern Rhone. If you're looking for a wine in the $25 to $30 price point, I strongly recommend you give this wine a try. I found that I'm definitely a fan of cool climate wines. There's something special about those wines in that they tend to be a little bit more elegant and have a bit more freshness and acidity than some wines that are produced from grapes that are grown in much warmer climates. One example is Tasmania. While I'm a big fan of wines from Tasmania, the problem is that there's not that many that are distributed internationally, and particularly very few that are available where I live. One notable exception comes from Tolpuddle. So the next wine that I'm buying in 2026 is the 2023 Tolpuddle Vineyard Pinot Noir from Tasmania, which sells for around $89 per bottle. This is a wine that's received tremendous critical acclaim. While Tolpuddle does a consistently excellent job year after year, I particularly enjoy the 2023 vintage. This is a wine with pronounced aromatic intensity, and it's extremely elegant with abundant acidity. Descriptors are very much red fruit focused, with cherry, raspberry, and pomegranate, but you'll also find descriptors such as violets, mixed herbs, and spice. This is wine that comes in at 13.5% alcohol by volume, and it is a wine in a screw cap. So don't be surprised by that. That's extraordinarily common for Australian wines. I've been singing the praises of the 2019 vintage in Brunello di Montalcino for a long time now. The Reservas are still in the retail channels now, but you'll need to act quickly as the next vintage will be released very soon. And before long, the price for the Reservas from 2019 and also the regular bottlings from 2019 will definitely be starting to head north, as you can only find them in the secondary market. Il Poggione traces its roots back to the 19th century, is one of the 3 original producers of Brunello di Montalcino. It's now run by the 5th generation of its founder. Il Poggione believes that the best wines are produced from the vineyard. As such, they emphasize biodiversity and sustainability, and all their fruit is harvested by hand. Of course, the winemaking is also important, and in 2004, Il Poggione completed the production of a brand new state-of-the-art facility that uses modern winemaking equipment to produce some extremely high-quality Brunello di Montalcino. So the next wine that I'm buying in 2026 is the 2019 Il Poggione Brunello di Montalcino Riserva Vigna Paganelli. This is a wine that was extremely highly acclaimed and sells for right around $145 per bottle. The fruit for this wine comes from their special vineyard, Vigna Paganelli, which was planted back in 1964. This is a wine that's only bottled separately and produced in extremely strong vintages such as 2019. The most recent bottling was 2016. This wine has impressive intensity, concentration, and depth. There's layers of flavors that include blackberry, plum, cherry, licorice, mixed herb, and spice. This is not a wine that you want to open anytime soon, however. I found that this wine is much better with some extended aging. So I definitely recommend buying this one and putting it away in the depths of your cellar. You'll definitely be very glad you did later on. To learn more about the outstanding 2019 vintage for Brunello di Montalcino, please watch this video that's linked above.